are reaching a point now where socialism, it's not financially feasible anymore, and that's why we're seeing the introduction of things like these P3s, public-private partnerships. These were tried in the 1930s in Germany and Italy. They're nothing new. It's a form of socialism called corporativism, where the ownership of the systems, if you will, the medical system or the electrical system, is private, but the government controls the operation entirely. This is sort of the last gasp breath for socialism. When you can't afford to buy any more reactors or put any more things together, you let other people put them together for you. You beg them to come in and put things together for you, but then you tell them how to run the things. Of course, it doesn't work. Nobody's coming in to build reactors. Nobody's coming in to build power because they all know that the result is going to be that they're going to be told how to run those, and they're not going to be able to make any profit. It's time now for people to get their heads out of the sand, and I'm talking about the people in government, and fess up to the public and say, look, capitalism needs to be allowed. Profit or perish is the rule in 2000.
Now, how are you going to sell that to a province that has become very comfortable in living in the lap of the modified form of socialism that we have here? How is the Freedom Party planning on doing that?
Well, look, you know, as I see it, we have a responsibility. Maybe we have a bit of a luxury, not having a reputation to lose, but only one to gain. We have the freedom to be frank with the public. We will be as frank as we need to be, and that's 100% frank in this case, because nobody else is willing to. We're going to see a few proposals about writing off mortgage interest and phased in over 450 years or something along these lines, just to keep the public voting Tory, thinking, well, if they're giving me a bone, it's better than nothing. But the reality is, 5 years from now, some of our kids are going to be entering universities. Some of us are going to be sick. Some of us are going to be retiring. Some of us are going to be priced out of our homes for taxes. And unless people like Freedom Party stand up and tell the public right now that it's time to get our heads out of the sand and make the difficult decisions now, then 5 years from now it's only going to be much worse. We're going to be there 5 years from now again. We're laying the groundwork now. We're the only party proposing capitalism as a solution. And people like to believe the Tories are proposing capitalism. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at the NDP, the Liberals and the Tories, their only solution is more public ownership of healthcare, more public ownership of schools, public ownership, public ownership, public ownership, which can only mean tax, tax, tax to fund them. That's not capitalism. That's socialism, as much as they want to wrap it up in a capitalist role.
Well, can you sell your message if it turns out that a majority of Ontarians are socialists at heart?
Well, the thing about socialism is it tends to implode. So just as it imploded in the Soviet Union, and we saw the economic implosion there and the fall of the wall, the Berlin Wall, we will see the same thing happening in healthcare. In fact, we're already seeing it, because these last-ditch efforts to sort of get private companies to set up hospitals and hope like the blazes that they'll live on meager profits is really just a half measure before you finally admit that there is no money there to fund a socialist healthcare system. We're up to our eyes in debt. There's no more room for wiggling, and this is just the last gasping breath in Canada of what we saw in a more radicalized socialism in the Soviet Union.
Well, a lot of people would listen to you say that, though, Paul, and say that maybe you're overstating the case a little bit, that we don't see the signs of crumbling that we saw there, that we've got, we have a healthy GDP or gross provincial product, if you will, that economically Ontario is still fairly sound, that yes, we're heavily taxed, but we get a lot back for our tax dollars. A lot of it may be wasted, but we get a lot of value. I mean, a lot of people look at the situation and believe that.
Yeah.
How are you going to convince them? This is what fascinates me about your party. You guys are also confident that you can get this message across. How are you going to convince people of this?
Well, luckily the economy's on our side. You can't fool the economy, and the economy will simply implode, at which point we'll be proven right anyway. But in the short term, I can tell you as an employment lawyer that we are very quickly, because of the low dollar, finding most of our significant factories and et cetera being bought out. Really, we're being turned into more of a branch plan economy. The reason that we have this perception that we're successful is because the Americans need to have cheap labor. We think we're being paid the same amount, but that's only because our dollar's worth 60% of what the American dollar's worth. We're actually cheap labor. And when we cease to be a palatable place in which to set up plants, and we're seeing that more and more, the Americans will pull out, and then we'll realize just how poor we are. We are successful in Ontario despite our socialism, not because of it.